Hi everyone, today let's talk about oil, then we'll get into the economic data, then we'll get into the charts, as well as my terrible results for the day. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So oil countries have been tightening the taps, saying that they're going to reduce their supply by quite a bit. And now we're seeing oil go over $90 a barrel for the first time since November. This is obviously going to put some pressure on the economy. When oil prices go up, that usually cuts into margins. Saudi Arabia and Russia are keeping their taps turned down a bit, meaning that they're not producing quite as much for the markets. And you can see Brent crude continues to trend upwards pretty aggressively. So why do I care? They say, of course, we are seeing higher prices at the pump, nearing that dreaded $4 mark. Again, more money out of the hands of consumers going towards oil and gas means that we're not going to see the same kind of demand for other goods. And if we do get a stagflationary environment where we still have inflation, that could cause central banks to keep rates higher for longer while the economy continues to slow down, which obviously would be bad for the equity markets, but potentially good for something like gold. Moving over to the sentiment survey here for the 6th, massive number here on the bulls, 42.2%, probably meaning that there's a little bit more downside to come. I think this will be shifted down quite a bit after this week. We've definitely seen some bearishness. Bears all the way down at 29.6%. Historical averages, you can see here 37.5 versus 31, so we're below average on bears, a little bit above average on bulls. And if you're a contrarian, this looks a little bit weaker for the bull case. Moving over to the economic calendar, Eurozone GDP missed on both accounts. Jobless claims much lower than expectations. Previous number was revised up slightly. Brent crude, very negative. We just talked about that. And then the Fed balance sheet going down by about 20 billion this week. Looking at tomorrow, there is basically nothing on the calendar. Moving over to Max Pain, shifted down $1. Markets shifted down $1. We're right on top of Max Pain. You can see that here, Max Pain 445. I could see this rally just a little bit because there are so many more puts than calls here, pushing up maybe to 446, 447, somewhere in this area. I wouldn't expect it to get above 449 though. That's going to be the upper limit. Realistically, 448 probably is the upper limit. So maybe like $1 or so higher potential here for Max Pain for tomorrow's session. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps on the hour and the daily. You can see we fell really aggressively here in the pre-market, bottomed out almost immediately and then rallied through the session. Definitely interesting, getting above the 21 EMA here on the 1 hour chart, holding above that 200 as well. This was a pretty aggressive move and you can see quite a lot of volume on that last candle of the day. Definitely interesting as well. Rallying a little bit after hours. Not quite above my level, 445.49. You also have the 55-day moving average sitting at 445.52. If you get above this level, might be a nice little trade up to 448. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to happen tomorrow, but it could be interesting. Momentum on the daily chart still continuing lower. Hourly chart did turn bullish here for the first time in a little bit during the session. Last time we saw bullish momentum realistically was back on 29 August. Moving over to the Qs here on the hourly and the daily, you can see very similar thesis. Fell a lot during the pre-market. We finished up around 374.50-ish yesterday after hours, and we got all the way down to around 369.27, hitting that trend line. So big fall early in the markets. And then we basically rallied throughout the rest of the session. We did have a wick high on that first candle on the hourly chart. Came all the way back down to this level. I added a level here at 370. And I'm going to take this level off here at 371. I think this is the better range to trade here. You can see that bottoming formation, which does mark this kind of stop, pullback, rally through, stop, same level there at 370. And then we stop there once again. Definitely a better level. Now we're trading between this range after breaking that here in the pre-market. Pre-market breakdowns tend to be a little bit more challenging for me because options don't trade in the pre-market. Otherwise, looking at the daily chart, basically the same as the SPY. Gap down, hit that highly traded zone, rallied throughout the rest of the session. Momentum fading still here on the daily chart, volume picking up, but slightly bullish momentum here on the hourly chart. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow on the 4-hour chart, similar thesis for the Russell, fell aggressively back into this previous consolidation, hit the highly traded zone at 183.91, rallied just slightly at the end of the day. Dow held this level, threw a wick to the lows, and then rallied a little bit up to the 55. Looks a little bit more bullish. Momentum ticking towards bullish as well. Could be establishing a lower high here. Definitely interesting. And does look a little bit stronger than the other major indices. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see Apple falling super aggressively, wicked all the way down to 173.60, finished up around 177.95. Huge wick to these previous lows. Momentum did fade a little bit towards bullish in the after hours. That'll be interesting. Again, could be establishing a slightly higher low from this previous low, but big wick rejection, definitely interesting. And Apple was once again one of the worst performers on the day. Tesla threw a wick to the downside, finished basically unchanged on the day. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples found a little bit of legs here today. Not what you would want to see if we are looking to turn more bullish in the markets. Momentum here looking to push back up to the highly traded zone around $72. Potentially all the way up to the 55 EMA around that 72.50. Does seem to be curling up. Still definitely a downtrend, but finding some strength. Big volume on that last candle of the day as well. Discretionary, big wick down to the 55 EMA. We talked about that yesterday and then found some strength. Very bullish on the day. Definitely interesting as well. We're right at the SMA on RSI. Could see a breakdown from that level. If it does break down from here, that could be quite bearish, potentially pushing down to the highly traded zone at 164.50 or this trend support at 165-ish. Definitely interesting, but a little bit bullish here. Moving over to breadth, 50-day average, basically a doji, through a wick low, looks like it found some support. 200-day average, big bear candle, wick to these previous lows here. Now, if this breaks down tomorrow and we start to make a new low, that's going to be very bearish. If it holds here through a wick to these lows and we get a rejection tomorrow, that could actually be quite bullish. And maybe we look for a bigger rally, taking out this previous high and pushing back into this 62 to 65 area. Looking at yields just for a moment, 2-year yield, big bearish engulfing candle. Interesting. 10-year, also a bearish engulfing candle. If this continues lower here tomorrow and we establish a lower high, that could be very interesting and potentially look for some higher highs in equities. Moving over to the dollar here on the hour and the daily, basically no change from yesterday, continuing to grind higher, made another higher high here today. Price target still at 105.50. Everything still looking super bullish. Bullish momentum here on the daily chart. Hourly chart still grinding higher on basically no momentum. Moving over to bonds here on JNK and TLT. JNK, gap down, massive bullish candle, very interesting. Definitely engulfed the previous one, pushed up to the highly traded zone. If this continues to rally here tomorrow, might be a bullish indicator. TLT, doji on the day, nothing doing. Moving over to the volatility indices, move index, big breakdown. VIX, also big wick high, big breakdown. Basically the inverse of what we saw across the major indices. And this does look like a strong rejection and like we're going to find some new lows here back towards these previous lows around 1330 in my opinion, or potentially all the way down at trend support around 1289, certainly possible. This just looks like a strong rejection in my opinion. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen. You can see we had rejections like this where we kind of gapped up and held in the zone for a little bit. This was a big wick rejection on the 18th. It didn't quite move much lower until about a week or two later, which it ended up doing, but it was a little bit choppy during that portion. So pay attention to this, definitely interesting. And I'll be looking to see how that finishes in tomorrow's session. Moving over to my accounts, I had an abysmal finish. You can see I ended up losing $1,000 in my main account. Absolutely terrible. NASDAQ was only down about 574 on those 200 shares that I had, but I got absolutely shredded on this session. Did not go well for me. And I ended up losing a little bit less than double what the market ended up costing me. And that's the opposite of what I want. I tend to want to lose a little bit less than what the markets cause me to lose. And that just did not work out well for me in this case. In terms of bias, you do have to be a little bit biased to the downside, but we're seeing some early indications of a potential reversal, especially on those breadth charts. Let me know down in the comments section what you think about oil and how it's going to impact the economy and the markets going forward. And if there's any other charts that you think I should be watching, put those down in the comments as well. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.